Hey, what's up, Nashville? I am Beau Beach. Welcome back to the podcast. We are going to catch you up on the commercial real estate news in Nashville over the past few weeks. I know your time is very precious, so we're going to move quickly. We've chosen some stories that I think are both informative of the current time in our marketplace, and then we'll sprinkle in a little entertainment as well to try to keep it light. So let's get started. Developer pursues 152-acre industrial park in Smyrna. A local industrial powerhouse has landed on a 152-acre site for his next Nashville area project. Hamilton Development is pursuing a 1.8 million square foot industrial park. It's the 14th industrial park in the Nashville market for the local firm, which currently has 4.5 million square feet of projects underway. They have begun construction on the new speculative industrial development. So, industrial is one of the few product types still being built on spec. The supply demand imbalance is still very strong in industrial. Uh, so you're able to get them financed and offer them as spec projects. It's immediately off of Interstate 840 and within a close proximity to the airport and Nissan's assembly plant. The project will be called Cornerstone Business Park. It will feature 12 buildings total with 1.8 million square feet of shallow bay industrial space, which I think is interesting. Smaller warehouses meant for multiple tenants. The first phase, which includes 8 buildings, is expected to be completed early next year. Quote, demand for shallow bay space in the Nashville market is strong. I agree. And this site offers a terrific opportunity to build the convenient, flexible, quality space that we know these smaller users are looking for. Rutherford County is one of the fastest growing areas of the state. Leasing volume for the Nashville industrial space totaled 13 million square feet last year, marking a 4.8% increase from the year before. So the takeaways here, in my opinion, are, understand how in demand industrial space is in Middle Tennessee, so much in demand that these developers are not having a difficult time financing speculative development, and targeting small bay industrial space, meaning, we're not talking about massive 100,000 square foot buildings that one tenant is going to fully consume. These are smaller tenants, shallow bays, one next to the other for more of a local business owner. So I've always said, if you can get into small industrial properties, call it as little as 1,500 square feet up to 2,500 square feet. I'm sure these will be a little bit larger than that. But 1,500 to 2,500 square feet in a decent location in Middle Tennessee, and you will never have vacancy. There is such strong demand for that type of product out there today. The biggest constraint for new development is zoning. So finding industrial zone land on which to build and paying a price that makes sense is the biggest constraint there, not demand, not financing, which is not the case in other property types. Let's keep moving. Despite massive layoffs, Oracle continues to expand in Nashville. The tech giant will operate in Neuhoff District while its River North global headquarters is under construction. And I would tell you, under construction, maybe putting a spin on it because they aren't doing a whole heck of a lot. Since they've acquired that assemblage, now called River North, there's been very, very little activity, right? Lots of planning. I'm not sure there's been a single shovel in the ground over there yet, which makes folks nervous, right? So you've got this massive planned project that just isn't taking shape. And then you've got Oracle announcing thousands of layoffs. That puts people in a state of nervousness, right? Perhaps the Oracle headquarters isn't going to get done, right? But judging by what they're doing locally to acquire lease space in the interim, it seems as though this is still something they plan to do. They recently signed a lease for 116,000 square feet of space, which is effectively right across the river. They currently operate offices in addition to this newest one at Newhoff, 150,000 square feet in the Radius building on 11th Avenue North in the North Gulch's Capitol View area. In addition, the company leases about 60,000 square feet of space in the Hellstream anchored building nearby, also in Capitol View. Oracle will offer about 2,000 employees in Nashville once the Newhoff office is operational. Company officials have said the goal is to eventually have about 8,500 employees working in Nashville. They consider Nashville to be the epicenter of Oracle's cloud and AI growth. So while they are, in fact, laying off thousands of people elsewhere throughout the country, they aggressively are acquiring lease space. The lease space they have, they say, will accommodate up to 2,000 area employees when their headquarters campus is actually complete and stabilized. They expect that number to potentially get to 8,500 employees, a very, very big deal for Nashville. So I hope it continues to trend in the right direction. I think it will be a very positive sign when you see the cranes go up in the River North area, because it seems to me that they're very much dragging their feet on actual ground up construction for their new headquarters. But this is promising. I think this is going to settle folks down who kind of were reading the tea leaves and saying, oh, I don't think the Oracle deal is actually going to get done after all. I think this is evidence that we're trending in the right direction. Next, a Music Row luxury apartment tower defies the market and is completed ahead of schedule. So for those projects that were bought in 21, 22, 23, most of them have stalled out. Most of them haven't even gotten financed. Most of them don't have a crane on site. This is the exception to that rule, which I think is worth celebrating. Chicago-based Albion Residential announced Wednesday pre-leasing is now underway for its apartments called Albion Music Row. It is a tower nearing construction completion in Midtown. Move-ins are anticipated later this spring ahead of schedule. A fall completion had been originally been the plan. The 1.87 acre property was previously part of the since closed Beeman Toyota campus. So if you remember those very high-priced transactions years ago, this is one of the first towers to rise there. The updates come about 2 years after ground was broken on what is expected to eventually be a two-tower development. The first high-rise will offer 458 residential units and stand 29 floors, or approximately 350 feet. The tower will feature an outdoor plaza with a performance lawn, a rooftop pool, an indoor and outdoor fitness facility, a podcasting studio, co-working and social spaces, as well as a restaurant space. The second high-rise is slated for the site will have 20 stories, a little bit smaller, about 250 feet, and 392 apartment units. Albion paid $31 million for the dirt in June of 2023. So the reason I think that's important, as I just mentioned, is that's some very, very high-priced dirt paid, acquired in those few years where a lot of big buyers were buying very high priced dirt, and most of those projects are stalled out right now. This is one of the few projects that got going, and now they're actually going to finish ahead of schedule, which I think is a welcome sign for the market. If that project goes well, perhaps other developers can use its success to really explain why their projects should get financed and started as well. So I think it's kind of proof of concept for the market. I think it's going to do very well. And I think you're going to see that second tower start soon after. I'm not sure I would love to be staying in a high-priced apartment knowing there's going to be a giant tower constructed immediately next to it in the near future, but maybe most apartment renters aren't paying any attention to that and they'll just be surprised when it happens. But nevertheless, very, very positive for the market, very positive for other developers who are really fighting to get their projects off the ground. Industrial site near downtown sells for over $25 million. Blackstone paid $25 million for a 20-acre last mile logistics property located in South Nashville near Trevecca Nazarene University. The property is home to Intermodal Cartage, Inc., a trucking and container drayage company. Drayage. I've never heard of that word. DRAY. Drayage company. The parcel last sold in 2021, which is one of those years where people were paying sky-high prices, right? So in 2021, the sky-high price for that property was $8.25 million. So the joke's on you because that buyer just flipped the deal, seemingly fully leased to Intermodal Cartage for $25 million. The seller in the 2021 transaction paid $1.9 million for the property in 2005. So from $1.9 million in 2005 to $25 million in 2026. Blackstone has been active in the Nashville market for many years. In August 2025, the company sold downtown skyscraper Fifth Third Center for $55 million, a whopping $89 million less than it paid for the property in 2019. So they owned it for 6 years and they took a write-off of $89 million to sell it. So you win some, you lose some. Let's keep moving. BNA announces details of its $40 million terminal expansion. There's so much going on at BNA. You know, it's hard to keep it all straight. So I'm going to give you just a real quick overview of what this $40 million buys you. BNA has officially launched an 18-month project known as Central Core Enhancement. The improvements include increasing the number of escalators from 6 to 16 inside the terminal, doubling the elevator capacity by adding an elevator and replacing the 2 existing elevators with new elevators that are bigger, faster, and better. The project will include the addition of wayfinding tools, signage, communication mechanisms, and additional staff to guide and update travelers. Construction is set to begin June 1 and is expected to be completed next year. BNA's passenger volume has more than doubled in the past 10 years. The announcement comes on the heels of several planned updates to the airport, including a new rental car and parking garage facility, which is expected to be completed in 2029, and plans for a second terminal to be developed in 4 phases. So I've always said BNA is one of the best airports. I have a fondness for it. It's well run. It's clean. It's got a good vibe. It's not overly big and complicated. I've always been a big fan of BNA, and it just keeps getting better and better. All the improvements that they make are at outrageous costs, outrageous how much money these airports spend on improvements. Nevertheless, when it gets done, it sure is nice. Here's another interesting story for you, one that I have fondness for, an Elevated Fitness and Recovery Club, right? Elevated Fitness and Recovery Club is now open in Hillsborough Village, called Nashville Performance Club. It's in 5,000 square feet. It considers itself a performance-based training club model. Training club. It pairs group training, personalized coaching, performance assessments, and recovery amenities, including cold plunges and a sauna. Let me tell you something. I'm a real healthy guy. I've got all the gadgets. I once had a cold plunge, right? Because it's very on trend, right? The health benefits of cold plunges. And when I tell you I hated that cold plunge, I absolutely hated it. I dreaded it. If there was any health benefits associated with it, it was not worth it to me. I did not own it long. That being said, I do have a sauna. I do have a hot tub, which I like very much. So to each their own. But the idea that I'm going to use my limited willpower to force myself into a freezing tub of water, not going to work for me, did not make me feel better. Uh, made me feel stressed and exhausted and run down. So to each their own. I know it's a tough guy thing. You feel good about yourself having forced yourself to do it, makes you tough. I get it. But being cold just is not my thing. They offer 4 signature training sessions for members called Perform, a foundational strength and conditioning class, Flow, a mobility and movement class, Restore, which is guided recovery, and Play, a high energy community class. Open gym and open recovery is also available. Membership begins with a performance assessment, identifying goals and creating a path forward with a coach. Its coach cohort model pairs members with a performance coach to support long-term progress, tracking benchmarks and goals. So Elevated Fitness Club, uh, I think is a cool idea, right? So this is a step past, you having that weekly hour with your personal trainer. This is a concept that's meant to get you in there, get you working, and keep you hooked on making that next milestone. I think it will work. It certainly would work for the people that have the time and energy to participate. I'm not sure how somebody like me that's got a very full schedule and 4 children would ever squeeze it in. I'm certainly not going to try. But I think it's very cool. And if I was a younger man with less responsibility, I'd probably be all over. I bet it's a cool scene, a cool vibe. Uh, and I hope it does well. But I thought that was an interesting enough business model to share with you. I hope it does well in Hillsborough Village. Next, Capitol Grill opens in Nashville. Y'all don't realize that we did have a Capitol Grill in Nashville, but it's been closed for almost 5 years. It was in the Hermitage Hotel. When the Hermitage Hotel went down for renovations, the Capitol Grill closed to never reopen. Well, if you're someone that's looking to get a good steak, especially if people are traveling to the city, they understand the Capitol Grill menu, they understand the Capitol Grill consistency. I think it's a big deal to have a Capitol Grill. Most major cities have a Capitol Grill. It will now open in Nashville on April 17th. It's almost 10,000 square feet. It will be located at 1223 Broadway, part of GBT's 122-1 development, right? It's known for its 18 to 24-day dry aged steaks. Wine lockers are available for an annual lease and come with access to private events and tastings, which is also something that Capitol Grill has always done. So, I think it's worth noting because I think it's a big deal, especially for tourism, to have a Capitol Grill available. I think it's impressive. We're seeing a 10,000 square foot restaurant get done in a brand new construction development, which I'm sure costs an absolute fortune. But if there's anyone out there that can make 10,000 square feet work, perhaps it's Capitol Grill. So there you go. Next, Paramount is using next generation tech to now pre-sell condos, right? A difficult task is selling condos before they're even built, right? And it's gotten much more competitive in Nashville to sell residential condos. So what Paramount has done is really invested in technology that lets you see and experience the condos before they even exist. The sales gallery for Giordano's 60-story Paramount Tower recently opened. It's a first for Giordano, who's built and sold more than 1,000 condos, more than any other developer in Music City. He opened the first condominium high-rise in downtown Nashville 20 years ago, pioneering the way for new developers to come in and do the same. The competition he welcomed has increased tenfold since then, and now they're all vying for the same customers. That's why Giordano knew his Paramount Experience Center had to be heads above the rest, and a 7.5-foot scale model of the tower in the center of the sales gallery accomplishes just that. Using a kiosk, potential buyers can select which condo they are interested in, and that unit will be lit up on the 3D model. On the other side of the room, a large TV will display floor plans of the unit, renderings of the interior of the condo, as well as views of the downtown Nashville skyline from that particular unit. That is very cool. So you understand the floor plan, which is great, but more important than that, you see renderings of the condo so you can kind of imagine yourself living there. But if you're buying a condo in a 60-story tower, I would sure think that the view is of very much important. So they've kind of solved for that. And now they're actually showing you the exact views of the Nashville skyline from your particular unit, which is a great idea. Guests of the sales gallery can see a full-scale kitchen and bathroom mock-up that features 11-foot windows with panoramic views from the 54th floor of Paramount. It took 2 days for the printing machine to render the 16K images used to imitate the city view. So they do have a built-out kitchen that you can experience, a bathroom mock-up you can experience, the windows with the panoramic views that you can experience. Very cool. The $460 million Paramount Tower is slated to offer 360 apartments and 140 condos. 35% of the residences have sold with an average price above $2 million. Giordano's goal is to pre-sell 75% of the condo units in Paramount by the end of the year. 3 penthouse units are under contract to sell to one individual, which Giordano says will mark the largest condo purchase in the history of Nashville. So Paramount is going to be an awesome project, right? And I think it's going to do real well. I think, if anybody can pull it off, it's that group. They've got more experience than anyone. They're creative. They know how to get things done. I think they just operate at a very impressive level. They've got their finger on the pulse of what people want, and they are providing it. March job report blows past expectations and what that means for an interest rate cut this year. The March employment report was a jolt of adrenaline for a labor market Americans had been growing more pessimistic about. The U.S. economy added 178,000 non-farm payroll jobs in March, roughly triple the consensus expectation of 60,000, and the strongest monthly gain since late 2024. So a huge jobs number, right? The unemployment rate ticked down to 4.3% from 4.4% in February. Average hourly earnings rose 0.2% month over month, keeping year-over-year wage growth near 3.8%. Unemployment fell to 4.3%, but not because people found work. The labor force contracted by 396,000 workers in March, meaning fewer people were actively seeking employment. Labor force participation remains near its lowest level since late 2021, which I just can't sort out. Why are people giving up on working if it's not to just siphon money from the government and all the welfare programs that are provided? We've got too many people in this country that are content living off the taxpayer instead of going out and creating a life for themselves in the private market. So how you can lose so many people from the labor force, I don't understand, unless they just decided that it's easier and good enough just to live off taxpayer-funded welfare. But that's neither here nor there. A strong jobs report is normally good news. For commercial real estate borrowers waiting on rate relief, it's the opposite. The print gives the Federal Reserve zero cover to cut rates at or before its late April meeting. It may push the first cut of 2026 even further out. JP Morgan no longer expects any more cuts this year. Traders are now pricing July at the earliest, with many strategists projecting the Fed holds through 2026 entirely if inflation reaccelerates on the back of higher energy costs and tariff pass-through. For investors with capital and patience, this crunch is creating the most compelling buying environment in commercial real estate. Properties unable to refinance will come to the market this summer unless interest rates dive soon. So, a blowout jobs report, in fact, is not good if you were hoping to get another interest rate cut later this year. So I know we are going to be changing our head of the Fed. Perhaps there's a way to get it done regardless. But as of right now, the experts on this sort of thing are kind of expecting there might be one cut, but later this year, and others are thinking there's going to be no cut at all because of the potentially rising inflation. Last story of the day, y'all. We'll get you out of here. Park Cafe turns 100 in dog years. And why I think this is informative, if you've listened to the podcast for any period of time, I've consistently discussed how difficult it is to survive in the restaurant business. Sit-down dining has never been harder to pull off in a profitable way. But Park Cafe is still kicking. It's for a restaurant to reach 25 years. So they've been open for 25 straight years. That's equivalent to almost 100 years in dog years. Sylvan Park's Park Cafe is one of Nashville's institutions that has gained a loyal following since opening in 2001. In the winter months, Park Cafe has set up igloos in the courtyard, hosted wine dinners, planned a quarterly neighbor day, and will set up greenhouses in the courtyard for spring. For restaurants, success often lies in their systems. Quote, restaurants have to find a way to invest in training because it costs a lot of money to do, but that's what needs to happen. It's a huge focus on training, even more than upkeep of the restaurant. So to stay alive for 25 consecutive years, they've invested in training rather than upkeep of the restaurant, which you don't hear too often. For the past couple of years, Park Cafe has been working on consistency. Hopefully, people can think of us as the place that's crazy reliable, but still fresh and new. From an industry perspective, I hope that we can get to a point where it's really well regarded by the people that work there. So they're claiming that they've been able to stay alive for 25 years with training and consistency. You just don't hear that very often. Normally what these restaurants are doing is every couple of years, every 5 years, perhaps they're doing a refresh where they're spending a lot of money on improvements, right? Construction. They're changing the menu a lot, right? They're changing the offering consistently to make it different, and the idea of different being more in demand. The Park Cafe has chosen a different path, right? They've focused on their people, training them to do well, training them to be consistent, and that's what's kept people coming back. So you just don't hear very often of a sit-down restaurant, a locally owned sit-down restaurant, really surviving 25 years. But that's how they've done it, and I think that's worth celebrating. So that's what we've got for you today, guys. I hope we've offered you something that you found informative, perhaps educational, maybe even a tiny bit entertaining. That's what we strive to do with the podcast. As always, I am Beau Beach. I am a commercial real estate broker who specializes in listing and selling commercial properties in Nashville and the Southeast. So if you are listening and you own a commercial property, you are considering selling it, or you just want to understand what the market looks like for your property, I would encourage you to reach out any way you feel comfortable. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you, answer your questions, and perhaps lead you to the right decision for you and your property. So thanks so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you again in a few weeks.